What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel, and it has been a while since I last made a video, but there is a lot of stuff to talk about across the world of sports, and I want to start in the NFL, and I want to start with an NFL veteran who is trying to make a comeback, and that is Cam Newton, who was actually throwing at Auburn's Pro Day the other day. I believe it was on Tuesday. And so Cam Newton is trying to make another comeback into the NFL. He's convinced that there aren't 32 quarterbacks who are better than him in the NFL right now, and he wants to be on an NFL roster. And when you look at Cam Newton, he has cachet. He's a former league MVP, number 1 overall draft pick, and he had a great handful of years in the league, in particular with the Carolina Panthers, and with his best year being in 2015 when he took Carolina to the Super Bowl. And that is the year that he did win his one and only league MVP award. And I think when I look at Cam Newton and his chances of coming back into the NFL, I don't believe they're that big. One factor being, I do believe he is a little bit of a, not a character, but he's a big personality, and I'm not sure that teams are going to want him on their roster to be a backup. Normally, when you're a backup quarterback in the NFL, nobody really knows who you really are. You're kind of quiet, you show up, you do all the work, you do all the preparation, and when your number gets called, you go into the game and you do your thing. And I do say backup because I don't really think that Cam Newton is a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL anymore. I just think his body's a little too beat up. I think he's taking too much punishment, and I think in terms of accuracy and throwing the football, he's not really a guy that can consistently hit guys on target time and time again at this stage in his career. But who knows? It'll be interesting to see where he ends up. You look at what he did with the Panthers all those years, and then he goes to New England, and he has a pretty decent stint with the Patriots, but they let him go. He goes back to Carolina. He didn't play at all last year, but the year before, he goes back to Carolina, and he plays 8 games, does a few things there, and since then, he's been out of the league. I guess working on his body, doing his little podcast thing. So I'm excited to see if a potential team will take a chance on him, but I do think the chances are pretty low, just considering the current state of NFL quarterbacks. There's so many good quarterbacks right now, particularly in the AFC, and I just don't think that Cam has a place as a starter in the NFL. And it'll be interesting to see like his emotional maturity at this point. Is he ready to be a full-time backup? Is that what he wants? Does he want to start somewhere? Because he said, when you look at his quote, he said there aren't 32 quarterbacks in the NFL that are better than me. 32 teams in the NFL, 32 starting quarterbacks. He thinks he's better than at least some of those guys. So I wonder what he's looking for. Does he want to start? Does he just want to be a backup? I would say that a personality like him, he would want to start somewhere. And I just don't think that. It depends on what kind of team would take a chance on him. Is it a team that's like a low market, doesn't get a lot of press, they just want to bring in Cam Newton, get some flash with him, and then see what he can do? Or is it just going to be a team that, hey, we need a backup, Cam Newton, he's done some stuff in the NFL, we'll sign him, we'll give him a chance. So that's going to be a story to follow as time goes on, as NFL offseason continues to run through. But I want to transition quickly to the NBA because I want to talk about one thing that was stirring up a little controversy over the last week, and that was Mario Chalmers on a podcast saying that his former teammate LeBron James, so for those of you who don't know who Mario Chalmers is, he was a point guard, a guard who played on the Miami Heat. This is what he was known for, at least, playing on the Miami Heat when LeBron James was there, won championships with LeBron. And he went on a podcast and said that nobody feared playing against LeBron James in comparison to Michael Jordan, where everyone feared playing Michael. He said nobody ever feared LeBron James. And I don't really get this argument about fearing people, because when LeBron James steps on the court, he's a guaranteed 27, 7, and 7, whatever. And in his peak, he is probably the most brutal, like freakish specimen that we've ever seen in the NBA. Peak LeBron James, those years with Miami, when he was just destroying everybody in transition, and also adding a little element of skill to his game when he improved his jumper. This thing about guys not really fearing anybody, I just don't really understand. Whether you feared LeBron or not, he had a dominant run of like 10 to 12 years where he was the undisputed best player on the planet. And when you look at what he did in the East is such an interesting conference because LeBron ran through that conference every year in his prime. Now, I'm a big Giannis fan, and I think Giannis is the best player in the NBA, but you don't see him running through the Eastern Conference every single year just because he's the best player in the league. And do guys necessarily fear going up against Giannis? I don't know. He has a similar style to LeBron, but I don't think professional athletes actually fear other professional athletes. And when you take it back to the throwback days with Michael Jordan, and they talk about his demeanor, he only cared about winning, he only cared about basketball. Teams were able to rough up Jordan before he got into his prime, got Scottie Pippen, Phil Jackson to help them win championships in Chicago. Jordan didn't win a playoff series without Scottie Pippen. He was losing in the first round without Scottie Pippen. The Celtics got him, the bad boy Pistons got him. So I don't think they necessarily feared Michael Jordan either, because they were able to beat him. Even though MJ did drop a 63-piece, still the highest scoring playoff game of all time against the Celtics beat him. The Pistons beat him. And obviously once he started getting to the finals, once he hit his prime, once he had all the necessary help around him that every superstar needs, he was unstoppable at that point. But this notion and narrative about a player being feared and that making them greater than somebody else, it's just not true. Because when you look at what LeBron did, he was the best player in the league forever. And he was the most unstoppable force and transition force in basketball forever. Went on a bunch of finals runs, won 4 championships. I do think he's out of his peak now, but when you look at this argument in terms of players that are feared, it's just not something that's like a really big or interesting topic to me. So when Mario Chalmers says nobody really feared LeBron James when he was in his peak, I'm like, okay, like that doesn't really matter. He still went to 8 or 9 finals in a row, won 4 championships, and there's a good amount of people who believe he's the greatest basketball player of all time. Now, whether you think that's true or not is a different story, but this argument of players being feared, I just don't really understand it. And so, sticking to the topic of the NBA, I want to talk about the MVP conversation, and also sticking to the topic about Giannis, because Giannis is a 2-time MVP. The Bucks are 53-20 now, I believe. They've won 24 out of their last 27 games. 24 of their last 27. Absolutely insane. They are most likely going to be the 1 seed. And he's probably most likely not going to win MVP this year. It's probably going to be Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic, one of those two. And I just want to talk about MVP because I think we're entering a period where the media, fans are going to make the same mistake with Giannis that they did with LeBron in terms of taking him for granted, and then when he's out of his prime, we're going to say, oh, we took this guy for granted, we should have given this guy more flowers. When you look at peak LeBron, there's no way he should only have 4 MVPs, because he had a 10 to 12 year run where he was the undisputed best player on the planet, and he only won 4 MVPs, and it was almost as if the media was finding excuses not to give him the award. And I think we're doing the same thing with Giannis Antetokounmpo, because I believe, in my personal opinion, since 2021, since he won that NBA title, he has been the best player in the NBA. And I think the Bucks would have won again last year had Chris Middleton not gotten injured against the Celtics. That's just my personal opinion. And this year, they look absolutely insane as a team. And they look like the best team in the NBA right now, not just record-wise, but in terms of all the stuff that they have. The three-point shooting, the defense, the personnel. And they just look like the best team in the league right now. And Giannis is not going to win MVP. And I just hope that we don't enter a phase where let's say 10 years from now, Giannis is out of his prime or whatever, he may be retired, I don't know, and we're talking about oh, we didn't give this guy enough flowers, we didn't give him enough credit for all the stuff he did, when in the moment we can avoid those mistakes and just give the best player, the guy that clearly deserves the award, MVP. He's the best player on the best team in the league. And I'll give you this, the Bucks have been relatively decent without him this year, particularly Drew Holiday, who stepped up big. But when you look at what Giannis has been doing, career high in scoring, 12 rebounds, 5 assists a game, number 1 team in the East, number 1 team in the league. They started the season 9-0 and were basically a top 2 seed all season long until without Chris Middleton. And Chris Middleton doesn't even play back-to-backs. He's back in the starting lineup, and they're still doing what they're doing. And I credit the Bucks, and because they do have a really good team around him. I will admit that this is probably the best team that Giannis has had around him in his career in terms of the depth and how guys are playing right now. So that does take away from his argument a little bit. But I think when you look at what the MVP criteria has been over the years, with the exception of 2017 when they gave it to Westbrook and 2021 when they gave it to last year, 2022 when they gave it to Nikola Jokic, it's usually always been who's the best player on the best team with the best record. And this year, that's Giannis. He's clearly the best player in the league. He's clearly playing. He's having a career year. I think he should be the MVP, but he's not going to win it. And in terms of the guys who I think the media wants to give it to, Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic, I would personally give it to Nikola Jokic because the Sixers are looking very good as well. I would personally give it to Joel Embiid because the Sixers are looking very good as well. They're a top 3 seed in the East, and I think honestly it'll just be because he hasn't won one yet. That may be part of the reason they give it to him. And the Nuggets have been on a tough stretch recently. They're recently coming off a 4-game losing streak, and so I think that hurts Nikola Jokic as well when you look at his MVP chances. So I guess out of the two that are most likely going to win it, I would give it to Joel Embiid. But I think Giannis should be the MVP. I think he should have 3 MVPs attached to his name. But I'm not quite sure that's going to happen. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are on the MVP conversation. Who's the best player in the league? Is Cam Newton going to come back in the NFL? Are there 32 quarterbacks better than Cam Newton? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on March Madness, the draft, all the stuff that's going on in sports. There's so much going on. Thanks for watching this video, and make sure to find all of my content linked in the description.